are joined now by Jesse Rogers of ESPN to talk a little baseball here. Jesse, how are you this morning?
I'm good. Good to be with you guys.
Good. We really appreciate your time, Jesse. Always know you're busy. We're going to start in the AL. I'm an NL guy, but my partner over here is a big AL guy, so I'm going to acquiesce and start there. Are you in or out on the narrative on the league as a whole in terms of their star power at the top? Like kind of the narrative has been all off season. Hey, there's no real great team in the AL, and are you in or out kind of on that philosophy as the season's gotten started?
Yeah, I'm kind of in on it. I think the Yankees obviously are playing great baseball, but I'm not sure about the staying power in terms of being that elite team without Stanton, without Cole. You can't lose those two guys and just kind of keep going. Although they're good, I just don't know if they'll be as good as good as they've shown. I think it's wide open in the AL. Texas Rangers are off to a good start. I like their team. Evaldi pitched a complete game shutout last night. Really like the bounce back of the Rangers after kind of a down year last year after winning the World Series the year before. AL Central, nothing special there. The Astros are trying to find themselves after losing, Bregman and Tucker and everything. Baltimore looks good at the plate, that's for sure. But we'll see. I buy into that narrative that the AL is a little bit more wide open, and we're not necessarily going to see, a 100-win team or maybe even a 95 to 100-win team.
Hey, sticking in the AL for a second, I'm a Red Sox fan, so obviously I need some therapy. But is there it too soon to hit the panic button? I'm assuming, but is there real reason for concern after they had what I thought was a pretty good offseason?
No, I don't think so. Way too soon. Alex Cora is good at what he does.
Yeah,
they're going to come together. A lot of people have picked them as kind of that sleeper team. I think it's way too soon. All sorts of guys underperforming that they're going to step up, starting with Devers, I'm sure. Several guys having slow starts that I expect to pick it up. So way too soon to worry about the Boston Red Sox.
all right. With Gosman and Scherzer will be back. Still don't know what to make of Barrios. You got Bassett. Is this a year where, since kind of the Blue Jays for once aren't a trendy, hey, look out for, could this be the year that the Blue Jays finally maximize surrounding all the Vlad talk in the offseason?
I've never been a Blue Jays guy. They really haven't fixed their offense the way they should.
No lefties?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
I don't know if I've been on with you before saying that, but that's my big thing. They don't have the balance. They might get the best out of Vlad because it's a walk year and all that stuff. In their pitching staff, there's moments where it looks really good and other times where not so much. I don't know. I'm just not a Toronto guy. I don't know why they're any better this year than they have been in the past, to be honest. They struck out on a few guys that they went after, as they have over the years. They've been okay. They're probably – in the past, they've been also in the wrong division. Maybe it'll be – I don't know why it'd be any easier this year, to be honest. There might be a little bit more parity in the division. You may not have a 100-win team, but anybody can beat up on anybody. So I'm not sure how the Blue Jays are going to stand out unless they really overachieve.
Hey, for you, who's going to be the real Bo Bichette?
Yeah, I think there's a good player in there. I think that I think the way he started his career is who he is. He just has to get back to it somehow. I haven't studied his game that intensely, but I talking to some scouts over the last couple of years when they were there were trade rumors and stuff. They thought there was a good player in there. Maybe a change of scenery would help, things like that. I don't know enough to know. But other people have said it's still in there. So sometimes that change of scenery can be the difference maker or something external, sort of clicks. But I think the real Bo Bichette is a really good player.
Jesse, as we look over at the NL a little bit, obviously Dodgers and Padres have gotten off to a great start. On the other end of the spectrum, the Braves have gotten off to a very bad start. Which do you believe more, the Braves off to a bad start that they're actually going to struggle this year, or let's say the Padres who have underachieved with a good roster in years past finally figuring it out?
I mean, look, the Padres have been good for a couple of years. This is not a complete shock. Now, a team that's undefeated, of course, is that you don't expect that 6-0, but San Diego is a good team.
Mm.
Their offense is really good when healthy. They added Nick Pivetta, which offset the loss of Musgrove. You got to get Darvish back. I'm not surprised by the Padres. I like their manager. I'm a little surprised by the Braves, but I guess I shouldn't be shocked. Ronaldo Lopez is down. Strider's not back yet. Acuna's not back yet. Profar's now been suspended.
Isn't that
it's not
something?
Fun it's not fun to start out west and including the Dodgers. So, like, everything is piling up on them. Doesn't mean they're out of it, but they are in a tough division. There's that saying, you can't win the pennant in April, but you can lose it. I mean, if they get down, 8-9 games in the division, watch out. That's tough to make up. They're only out 4 right now, but and obviously when you're an East Coast team and you get a West Coast trip out of the way, even if it's a losing trip, there's some benefit to that. Get it out of the way, come back east. You're going to play a lot more games in that time zone moving forward. Like, you can find a positive getting a West Coast trip out of the way early, but you need to win a couple games here. So I think it's piled up on them, and if it keeps sliding, watch out. It's such a tough division. They could be in trouble, but long way to go. So when they get Strider and Acuna back, things can all change and flip.
Jesse, so age was standing. I'm going to throw Lindor in here, not only because of his career, but, he had the great year last year, and he's got Soto behind him to protect him in the lineup. But I'm talking shortstops here. Sort through with me Gunnar Henderson, Lindor, and Ellie De La Cruz, age withstanding.
Wait, give me the choices again.
Gunnar Henderson, Francisco Lindor, and Ellie De La Cruz.
I would probably say Gunnar Henderson. I mean, did you say regardless of age or because of age?
Yeah.
Including age as a factor.
Yeah.
You have to include age. I would say Gunnar Henderson. Yeah. I mean, Lindor is a little bit older. Henderson is just already arrived, has a lot of years left in him. I mean, it's splitting hairs. De La Cruz is probably the most raw talent, but he's not quite harnessed at all. Gunnar Henderson is the real deal at a younger age in his prime. So I would probably go Henderson, Lindor, De La Cruz in terms of who do I trust more moving forward, though De La Cruz could jump them all if he really comes to, brings it all to the table and becomes a solid player, because his talent base alone is probably better than those other two guys.
So, Jesse, I got to take advantage of your expertise here. So outside of the bad years with Baltimore, well documented, when we're talking Rutschman and guys like Gunnar Henderson and their last couple of years, and I get it, they play in a tough division. Is there a secret sauce to how Baltimore has done this turnaround other than their talent evaluation? Are we is there something else in there?
I mean, teams like Baltimore and Cleveland and even Milwaukee and Tampa, they just have mastered the player development thing. And I think, it's more recent for Baltimore. Obviously, they lost 100 games a bunch of years in a row. That allows you to get top picks.
Yeah.
Those top picks have come to fruition. Not every team's top picks do, but theirs have. So I think the combination of scouting and development, systems in place that have shown success in other places, like Elias, saw it in Houston. Baltimore is kind of copying that. The smaller markets really have to make the right decisions more often. The smallest of decisions can make the difference, and they've mastered it. And I think those other markets I mentioned have as well. But it starts with scouting, and then it leads to player development. By the time they get to the major league roster, those players are pretty darn ready for the big leagues. They're not learning on the job. So it's that combination. I mean, I don't know if there's a secret sauce other than, making decisions every day that are, piling the right decisions on top of them, because you don't have money to use to overcome bad decisions. And Baltimore has entered that group where Cleveland, I put Cleveland, Tampa, and Milwaukee as the smaller markets that have mastered it. And now Baltimore is kind of in that group as well.
Jesse, speaking of kind of decision making, I brought up the Red Sox and their offseason over just a minute ago, but I'm curious, who do you think? And I know the Dodgers are kind of an easy choice here with all the payroll and all the people they added on there. Well, I guess not payroll with the deferred money, but I'm curious who you think got the most out of the offseason, not necessarily just signed the sexiest names, but actually got the most better?
Well, I would say the Dodgers, and I'm not, unless you want me to eliminate them. And the reason I say that, and the reason I pick them to repeat, which I never do with championship teams, because I believe in hangovers and all that stuff, and it's tough to go another 7 months and the extra rounds in the playoffs and all that. The reason I picked them is because I think Andrew Friedman understood that it is that hard to repeat. And rolling it back is great, which they mostly did, re-signed Teoscar Hernandez, but he did even more. The day I picked them to repeat was the day they signed not Tanner Scott, but the day they signed Kirby Yates, which was about 4 days later. They went out and got the best arm on the market, and then 4 days later basically got the second best arm, or arguably. I mean, Kirby Yates had a 1 ERA with 33 saves. He's pitching the 7th inning in Japan on game 2. In game 2, not even game 1. Like their B players could run out there for most teams. I mean, their B team could beat the Marlins or the Rockies or whatever. So I like the Dodgers because I don't think you could just run it back with front line, even with great teams, because there's always something in a 7-month season that's going to hit you. That's why we haven't had a repeat champion in 25 years. But he fortified more than you would think for a championship team. So I love the Dodgers. Now, if you want me to go elsewhere, I'm not saying this just because the Padres are undefeated. I really like the Padres. They nearly beat them last year. If you can get the Dodgers in a 5-game series like the Padres did, you got a shot. So in the NL, I like the Padres as much as anybody outside the Dodgers.
Hey, for you, how good is I'm a Dodgers fan, so I always ask about the other team because I know the obvious with LA. So I'm always checking the rearview mirror. So these next 2 questions are about guys that are going to try to run them down. How do you feel about? I want to start with Michael King. How do you feel about him as a bona fide 2 in that rotation?
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I'm buying in. I like him a lot. I don't have his numbers in front of me in terms of innings pitched, but because he started as a reliever, I'm assuming his arm is pretty safe from injury. You know what I mean? Like he's got a lot of good years left in him. Yeah, I've just punched it up. 1 year or 2 years over 100 innings, really just one real year as a starter last year. At 29, 30 years old, he could be coming into his own. And you have a lot of mileage left on his arm. I mean, what he did last year in his first full year as a starter was just absolutely amazing. I mean, 173 innings, 144 hits, that plays, 295 ERA. No, I'm buying stock in Michael King in part because he came to being a starter a little bit late, so he's got a lot of mileage left on his arm. I really like what he's doing in San Diego.
All right, more of the fear factor. Do you expect a true bounce back year for Carroll in Arizona?
Yes, I do. Maybe Water will find its level. Maybe he won't be the 5-tool powerhouse in every area that he was kind of his first season. But yes, he's so smart. He's so talented. The legs play in this day and age. Yeah, I think that batting average will go back up. Maybe he's not going to be the slugger that he kind of showed. Yeah, but the answer is yes. I don't know if Corbin Carroll's like a top MVP candidate, but Corbin Carroll's a really, really good player. And if he's not at his best, he's not top 5, but he could be a top 10 guy in terms of like MVP voting. So I wouldn't doubt him. He's so smart and talented that at the very least he'll be a solid player.
Jesse, I have to ask you because it's been one of the biggest headlines in baseball over the first week of the season, and that's kind of this big hullabaloo about the torpedo bats, right? In your opinion, is that real in terms of the difference that they actually do make for hitters, or is this, hey, kind of a real small sample size early on in the season, things will kind of figure themselves out?
I think the answer is kind of both. I do think there's an impact. The players wouldn't be using them. I do think it's an impact. I don't think it's the big impact that the Yankees had on the scoreboard. As I was talking to Byron Buxton yesterday, he's like, the guys hitting home runs for the Yankees this year are the same guys that hit them last year. Now, whether that's completely true or not, who knows? But the Milwaukee pitching staff just had a bad week, and everything's kind of a perfect storm too. So, but I do think it's kind of the storyline will recede a little bit. I think there's a bunch of guys that now are curious around the league. I talked to some players yesterday that are putting in orders for it. Who knows? I don't think it's going to turn a bad player into a good player or a good player into a great player, but it might result in a few more hits or a few more home runs for guys that use them that have a propensity to make contact in an area that isn't the thick part of the bat, which now might be once they order these bats. So I do think it can have an impact. It has had an impact, but I don't think it's going to change the game.
Yeah, Jesse, as a baseball guy, I'm a I don't know. I'm a little reluctant to think that with the specific dimensions that baseball has operated under, that we're simply missing the fat part of the barrel, right? Or more barrel. It didn't get the eye roll from me. It got more the how'd we miss this for so long?
Yeah, the idea of it, how did
Yeah.
we miss it? Yeah, I agree. It makes complete sense. I guess most of us probably just assume you can't change the bat the way they are, but you can, the way they have, but you can. I mean, the league has spoken up about this. So I don't disagree that I even, as a reporter, sort of missed the bat conversation. There's so many advancements in pitching. Why weren't we thinking of hitting? Now, I will tell you, during the spring, I asked some executives, because there's always something new technology-wise. I asked some executives what's next in baseball, and several of them are on teams that are using torpedo bats, and they didn't mention torpedo bats. And then I came back to them the last few days. They asked why not, and they said, well, we wanted to keep it to ourselves. So I don't know if teams were thinking they'd get away with it, and then Michael Kay, the Yankees announcer, just let the cat out of the bag. But eventually, I think we were going to notice them. The one thing is, I mean, you really probably wouldn't notice it unless you're told, right?
Right.
You'd have to, once you're told, oh, yeah, that looks different. But without being told, I'm not sure that you would notice it. So, but you're right. I am surprised that we haven't thought more about the bat. But I guess I just always thought the bat is the bat. You really can't change it that much.
Who's the best team in the AL West?
Well, not the Angels, even though they're off to a 4-1.
Look, I look at their number one, and I'm like, there's no way he can be your frontline starter. I get it. I get it.
Yeah, I'm not an Angels fan. I do think the A's are going to be better than anyone. Maybe there's a lot of people actually a little bit on the A's bandwagon. Anyway, I think it's the Rangers. I really like Bruce Bochy and Chris Young, and what I like is what I kind of said earlier. They really were upset with their team last year. They won the World Series 2 years ago, and they weren't going to just rest on their laurels. Some of their young players did. They made some changes. They really put a sense of urgency into that club. Made some shrewd pickups like Jake Berger. I think the Rangers at the end of the day are going to be the best. I'm not sure if Houston's in a little bit of a transition with Tucker and Bregman gone. They'll probably find their usual level. But I think the Rangers are the best team in that division. Houston, Seattle, will battle behind them a little bit. A's will be better, and the Angels will bring up the rear. But I do think the Rangers are the best team in that division.
What do you expect to get from DeGrom? Not often you'll see him behind a frontline guy like Evaldi on a staff. What do you think you get from DeGrom?
Well, it does sound like, he has come to terms with his situation, his injury history. Like I said, I think the hierarchy there is really smart. I would imagine they're going to get a bunch of starts out of him, is hopefully a full season of them. But I bet his innings are going to be a little bit down. Like, I don't think they're just going to let him have all the runway he wants like maybe he used to have. So could he be a 5 dive tie pitcher, 6? Yeah, I think I could see that. So if he makes 25 starts, that's a victory in itself. But maybe he's a 150, 160 inning guy. That's kind of what I'm thinking. But I don't see why he couldn't be the usual Jacob deGrom, as long as he's not trying to throw every pitch 100 miles an hour. It sounds like he's sort of come to terms with that. So I think they're going to be very careful, limit his innings, and see how the summer goes. Obviously, it could be different later on, but I think they're going to be very careful with him early on, and I don't see why he can't be as effective as ever, as long as he's not trying to throw it through the backstop.
Jesse, it seems like we've been waiting for a couple of years now on Seattle to sort of figure things out and get good and be a contender in that division. Is this the year, or is that do you just not see that being in the cards for this team?
Well, I do talk to a lot of people that are big fans of Dan Wilson. So maybe things, kind of petered out with Scott Service there at the end. Wilson could be a difference maker. I still see the same problems, though. Great pitching at home, not enough hitting anywhere.
Yeah.
I kind of see the same thing. Now, maybe, Julio Rodriguez was not great last year. He needs to be – I think I picked Rodriguez as the MVP last year. Like, he needs to be in that conversation for them to be really good. And they need to dominate at home. You know, they're off to a 2-4 start at home. They need to dominate at home with that pitching staff and get just enough hitting there, and then do whatever you can on the road, be 500 on the road. But if that ballpark's going to play that big and all that stuff, then you need to dominate. You need to let other hitters come in there and be mentally all messed up because of it. But until I see something different, they feel like the same team. Can pitch, can't hit enough, and they'll be okay, pretty good. But maybe Dan Wilson will be the difference maker. Let's see how that plays out.
I'm a big roster construction. I like acquisitions. I like deadlines. And I'm one of these nerds, Jesse, that likes to fast forward. I was joking with our listeners the other day. I kind of always look at potential guys that could be available at the deadline for teams to get better. Who's a couple of teams that have prime candidates, if they're not where they want to be, that you could see having some key pieces down the road here? And the Braves come to mind, but it's too good of a well-run franchise. But I look at the Marlins and with what happens with Alcantara and Sandy and see what happens. But are there some prime candidates that you think could have some guys available at the deadline?
Oh, absolutely. I'll give you one team. I'm actually writing about them for ESPN.com. The St. Louis Cardinals would be at the top.
Oh, I think they're going to be good, though.
Well, if they're good, that's a really tough decision for their front office because they are in a transition phase, and they are going to give a lot of runway to their young players, which could actually, end up hurting them a little bit in the standings. I don't know. I mean, they really need to be really good. Though I think the front office, John Mozeliak's on his way out. Maybe he wants to see one last winner. The other complication with the Cardinals is, 3 or 4 of their main guys have no trade clauses. But still, there's no better guy to have to trade at the deadline than a closer. And Ryan Helsley is one of the best.
Yeah.
You can get a ton for a closer at the deadline. I don't know. If they're just okay in an okay division, that's going to be a tough call. If they're, they need to be 10 games up or 10 games out, because if they're in the middle there, that's going to be tough. So I start with Ryan Helsley, but Miles Michaelis might finally waive his no trade. Who knows about Sonny Gray, Arenado? There's Wilson Contreras. There's so many options there if they're out of it. Some with no trade, some without. I put the Cardinals at the top list. Of course, the Marlins. I mean, I did a poll of executives. Sandy Alcantara, I think, won the poll, most likely to be traded. Luis Robert, the White Sox could have a couple pieces. So those are.
He makes me. I'm glad you brought him up. What is it? What am I missing with him that people seem to fawn over?
Who's that?
Roberts.
He's just got a really good looking baseball body and a really good skill set.
Yeah, okay.
A really good skill set, but he gets injured, and he does have a flaw in his game. He's got a lot of chase. It's gotten a little bit better, but look, he can run, he can hit, he can do a lot when he's healthy. He's had one good year. I don't disagree that from afar you're like, wait, what's so special? Which is why the Sox have held on to him, because they've not heard in trade talks what they want in return. It's not been an elite offer for him because he hasn't stayed healthy and put together a really good season for a couple of years now. So people think it's in there. If he shows up in the first half, he'll get moved, and maybe the Sox will get what they want from him. But it has been very inconsistent, mostly because of injuries.
Genius to be having the Cardinals coming up in this acquisition piece. I know I'm not crazy now. So who is the best team for you in the Central?
In the AL or NL?
NL.
In the NL Central, I do think it's the Cubs. Not just because Milwaukee's off to a bad start. I just think pound for pound, the Cubs are the most talented. Their lineup is already showing up. It's lengthy. It can really overcome some issues. Last year they had bullpen issues, but they're handing their bullpen some big leads so far. 3 guys have made a big difference, starting with Kyle Tucker, obviously the first star on the Cubs in a while. Pico Armstrong, their center fielder, is a real talent, can be a difference maker because of his legs. And then they have a catching duo, especially their starter, Miguel Amaya, really has come into. They have a 1 through 9 that can do more damage than anybody else in the division. There's some other question marks on the team, but the division's not great. I do think the Reds will be there. Milwaukee's still going to be there as well. It's a tough call, but I do think the Cubs will come out on top. Council's second year should be much better than his first, and just knowing the team and the ballpark played really big last year. Maybe it plays small this year. but I think he understands his roster better. There's more speed. Milwaukee's still really good. The Reds are going to be better with Francona, but I'd say pound for pound, the Cubs are the best team in the division, at least on paper.
Always spectacular. Anytime we get a chance to get you, Jesse, we appreciate it. Best in the business.
You got it, guys. Anytime. Be well.
That's Jesse Rogers, ESPN. We appreciate his time as always.
He's sensational.
Just the Rolodex is endless there.
And you can go like, who else is wondering about? I was afraid to ask.
Yeah,
because when I told you the other day, I rolled like.
Oh, about Gunnar?
No, off trade deadline acquisitions.
Yeah, because we're a week into the season, so I was like, well,
this is gonna sound horrible, but I'm honest. It's because I always, it's a foregone conclusion that the Dodgers are going to be in the hunt.
Yeah,
I want to see what's available.
Sure, yeah. See what you might have to choose from.
I look at
shore up some places.
Yeah, and I did the rundown of all the teams in the AL, and I'm like, there's no great team in the AL. So then I look and see what they can get.
Yeah,
Alcantara's the guy, though.
Yeah,
yes, because you look at him 3 years ago, and you're like, this guy's an ace.
Yeah.
But I keep waiting on that staff in Florida, like actually
to help
do something,
help him win it all.
Yeah.
I
should have asked him about the AL too, because
the Marlins. I don't think it's happening.
You got the Guardians and the Royals, and
I don't
the Twins.
Yeah, the Twins are off to a slow start. I don't know who's going to come away there.
I don't know. I kind of like Kansas City, but I hate going against the Guardians, especially after how they just opened with them. But again, it's early.
Underwhelming, to say the least, in the AL Central.
Maybe not, though. What wins it, 84, 85?
That's pretty underwhelming.
Yeah, I get it.
Anything under 90 is kind of like,
Should I be talking about the Tigers?
Should you?
I don't know. They were pretty good.
Yeah.
But they came from off the grid.
Yeah, it's hard to believe in some of the off-the-radar teams.
I know you don't love it at the top, but it may be the most competitive.
Oh, for sure. It's going to be hyper competitive, but I don't think there's a great team in that division.
Oh.
But you don't think there's a great team in the entire league?
No, but I do worry if the Yankees go out and get a frontline starter.
So that's going to be interesting. Like if they're in play for Sandy.
I don't trust Evan Williams.
No. I mean, that's
a tough ballpark for him to pitch in.
Yeah. Do you try? I mean, but the Yankees don't have anybody.
And he never has easy outings. Like as a closer,
yeah,
it's like always.
Those are the guys that are the worst. The closers that you're just.
You see what he did against his old team? He almost flubbed that one.
Yeah.
Now I get the nerves though, and it's like opening day, but he almost blew a 4-run lead.
Give me easy outings over stuff. I just navigate it well. That's all I want to see.
Ravi here for Adam Kenley Jansen.
I am on Kenley Jansen. I wasn't a big fan of his experience.
Well, you got our leftovers. Enjoy that.
Well, you got my leftovers, but they were still good. And his name was Mookie Betts.
And he's gonna be in the running for
still mad about it.
MVP.
I always got to bring up.
He's pretty clutch last night.
Why I always got to bring up old stuff.
Sorry.
24-hour
statute of limitations.
Like usually,
go ahead and run RBI last night.
You break up with somebody, you want them to do poorly.
And I don't want to see the Braves struggle. So 0-6, I'm very sad.
Yeah, that's a tough start.
I like when the Braves are good.
Yeah, I do too. I mean, I grew up in kind of that era.
I jinxed them, but I didn't jinx them because I didn't say anything that wasn't true. For a couple years since the World's they just cannot.
They can't stay healthy.
And even the year they won it, they had to overcome injuries.
Well, Acuna was out that year, wasn't he? Yeah. I mean, they've struggled. I mean, Acuna specifically, but they've struggled with injuries for a long time. Don't worry though. Their ace is the famously healthy Chris Sale. So it'll be fine.
Boy, you stay petty. Stay petty.